Good morning, everyone. We will get started in a couple of minutes. We'll just wait for everyone to join. So do just sit tight for a few more moments, please. Right, good morning, everyone. Let's kick off with this morning's session. So hello, my name is Adam Crampsey. I am the Managing Director of Bloom Procurement Services. And with me today on our webinar is Alex Wright, our Senior Marketing Exec, Lee Dixon, our Legal Counsel, Nathan Dinsdale, our Supplier Operations Manager, and Tony Armstrong, our Category Manager for Construction. So just to frame the purpose of our session today, we have, as an organisation, recognised that we need to do a lot more working with our supplier base to make help our suppliers to understand how to grow their business with Bloom. We have lots of resources, we have lots of information. What we've never really done is taken the time to go through all of the aspects of our process end to end, and where you as an organisation can get maximum benefit from working with Bloom and with the suppliers and other buyers that work within the Bloom marketplace. So what we're going to go through today is some practical tips, some information, and some overall tidbits of information about how you can maximise your opportunities within the marketplace, both from a direct award with customers, but also from mini competitions if they're going through a competitive route. We have got an open Q&A, so as you'll see on here, if you've got any questions as you go through, please just drop them in the Q&A section. And then what we're going to do is at the end, collate all those, myself and the rest of the panelists will go through all of those questions and answer them. So please do ask as many questions as possible. By way of follow-up, we will send out this presentation. We'll also send out a link to this webinar that's been recorded, so actually you can share that across anyone in your organisation, and also share that presentation with anyone who you may feel beneficial. So we will crack on. So firstly, welcome to the Bloom Marketplace. Now, for some of you, you may have been registered with Bloom for quite some time. For others, this may be new as a new registrant to the marketplace. So we've existed for over 8 years, and we have a supplier base of around 4,000 suppliers who sit within there, who work with all of our customers from a public sector buy-in perspective to deliver their outcomes and deliver their requirements. So we exist by way of working in a different way to public sector procurement, which either goes out through an open tender or goes out through another way of procuring, either through the frameworks or through that open tender process. We operate in a very different manner. What we do is we match the buyer with the supplier through the most compliant route possible to deliver their outcomes. And there's a whole host of benefits that both the supplier and the buyer get from working in that manner. So we've delivered over 4,500 requirements for the public sector to date. And what we've done there is we've opened up our procurement to our supplier base across that requirement numbers we've delivered. You will not find those opportunities anywhere else. So because they've come through Bloom, they've not been put out through open tender, they've not gone through other frameworks, they are exclusive opportunities through Bloom and through the NEPRO 3 framework. So working with Bloom, you have the opportunity to access over 370 public sector buyers across the UK. And that number is growing every day. We're going to go into a bit more detail around that public sector buyer base and who they are and what they're buying. And what we're looking at the moment is roughly adding about 10 new a month from a buyer perspective. We are going to see that grow significantly as we start to develop our commercial side of the business and grow our buyers even more. And if you look at the total number of public sector buyers that are out there, it's into the 2,000–3,000. So whilst we've got a good number, there's still a lot of way to go for us to get more buyers on side with working with Bloom. So what type of work is an offer through the Bloom Marketplace? So firstly, we specialise in professional services. Now the term professional services is people always go to management consultancy first. So when you talk about professional services in the public sector, the first thing people think about is that white collar consultancy and all of that management consultancy and all the things that sit around with that sort of ilk of consultancy work. I actually prefer to use just the term services. And the reason for that is the number of categories that we deliver through Bloom and NEPRO 3 is vast. There are 20 categories in total, as you can see on the bottom of here, and there are 340 subcategories that sit below that. So why I prefer to use the term services rather than professional services is because, as you can see, as we start to look through some of these, they're getting much more into some of the blue collar work, but also getting into some of the service industries rather than being that typical consultancy, facilities management and catering. So, you know, these are the types of things that typically wouldn't be covered under a professional services in other frameworks, but within NEPRO 3, because of the size and scale, is covered here. What you'll also find is when you look through the category list, and there'll be a link at the end of this to where you can access the category list. Once you get down into the 340 subcategories, there's not a lot that isn't covered by NEPRO 3. If it's a service that has people involved in the delivery of it for the public sector, it is going to be involved and covered by NEPRO 3. So we've obviously got a vast amount of categories we cover. They all vary in size. So some are much busier than others. So our ICT category, our construction category, and our business strategy and the overall management consulting. So the organizational change management in the bottom left. There are three largest categories. So Tony's here today representing our construction category, which roughly represents probably about 20% of what goes through Bloom as a whole. So it's, as you can tell from that, quite a large number. ICT probably just pips that to the post slightly because of typically as well the spend on regeneration and all the work that's been doing on the digital agenda for the government has meant that the ICT category has grown significantly over the last 12 to 24 months. So any category here can be covered. So if you're sitting here today looking at this thinking, I don't know where I fit, I don't know where my business fits, I don't know what I deliver, where it fits, my recommendation is get the category list, sit with the category list and the subcategories that sit below that. So it sits as a category catalogue almost when you look at the document, and go through and circle all of the areas that your business covers. So you can start to understand the total number of categories and subcategories you cover. If you still struggle to understand where your business fits, that's where there's at the end of this presentation, there's some useful contacts. So going through to Nathan or going through to one of our category team to understand and look at what your business does, because if you are delivering services, there will be a place where it fits within here and we'll be able to help you with that. So we've got 20 categories and 340 subcategories of what we can deliver. And then we look at the buyer types. So NEPRO 3, the framework that we deliver, which is, you know, we have got other frameworks, but today we're just talking about NEPRO 3 because it is the predominant framework we do, can be accessed by any buyer in the public sector. And when I say any buyer, we can all go to the main sector types, which are on the screen now, but actually it goes much further than that. It goes to any wholly owned subsidiaries of councils, it goes to any spin-offs, it goes to any quangos, it goes to a very, very vast array of businesses that you may not even consider to be public sector, but actually are. They may be 2, 3, 4, 5 times removed from the public sector, but they are still under the regulations of the public contracting regs. So just because they're a limited company, just because they're a spin-off, they are still covered by the public contracting regs, so therefore can access NEPRO 3 and Bloom to buy their services. So as you can see here, we work across central government, local government, health and social care, blue light, higher ed, housing associations and schools. Local government is our biggest area. We're heavily represented. We're in about 70% of all of the councils across the country. And central government is a large growing area for us. So we're seeing an awful lot of central government agencies coming to Bloom with some very large projects, very large transformation projects who require a large number of consultants and service specialists. Blue light is also a large area for Bloom, with the Met Police being one of our largest customers. And then as a result of having the Met Police, we're starting to see an awful lot more forces coming on board to use Bloom for their services spend. Higher education and housing associations, decent representation and growing. Schools, we are the only DFE approved route for consultancy spend in a number of categories within schools. So in the education sector, if anyone's been on the DFE website, they've got a find a framework tool, which essentially you go through and you click through a lot of questions, and at the end it tells you where to access the procurement of the product or service or works that you need. If it's a service-based need that you have, the DFE indicates Bloom and NEPRO 3 as your route to access that. So that was a really good win for Bloom to get that accreditation from the DFE, and it was quite a rigorous process. So now, as you can see here, we've got the 20 categories, 340 subcategories, and then the main sectors that cut across that, and then all of the other businesses that sit below those sectors. So the opportunity is massive. Now, we've just done a piece of work, which I've just had returned back for us from Tussle. And so Tussle are one of the leading organisations for public spend data. And they've done us some analysis to look at the spend in 1920, so that's financial year 1920, for the 20 categories and 340 subcategories across the entirety of the public sector where they've got spend data. And it's a vast amount of data they've got. The analysis that's come back has shown that the opportunity size is around £23 billion annually in the public sector across the categories for NEPRO 3 and all of the sectors and all of the public sector buyers. Around £23 billion from services alone. That is a huge amount. So when we look at our future growth, when we look at how we're going to work with suppliers to deliver that growth, it's quite clear that we're not headroom constrained in growth. And there's a huge amount of opportunity. And that's why we are working with all of our partners to see how best we can all access that, because everybody wins from that. The buyer wins from more accessing Bloom and NEPRO 3. Our supplier base wins because they are getting more business and they're getting regular business and they're delivering more outcomes and getting case studies and demonstrables within the public sector. And then we have that virtuous cycle. More suppliers come, more buyers come, and it just grows and grows and grows and becomes a very thriving marketplace. So feeding on from that virtuous cycle that I've just discussed there, how can that Bloom marketplace help your business grow? So first, I'm going to go through some more information on NEPRO 3. I've touched on it a few times and mentioned it, and you've probably had some dealings if you've been in the marketplace for a while. So NEPRO 3 is the third iteration of NEPRO, cleverly named. I'm sure NEPRO 4 will be the next iteration. But NEPRO 3 has been around as long as Bloom has been, since 2012. It's been through 3 iterations that Bloom have won each time it's gone out to open tender. And it is a framework that is slightly different to other frameworks that exist in the market. The reason that NEPRO 3 is different to the traditional framework model is because it has a neutral vendor with a managed service provision. That's us, that's Bloom. We are the neutral vendor and we provide that managed service provision. So we sit on NEPRO 3, and I'll come on to talk about the contracting vehicle and the flows of the legalities. We sit on NEPRO 3 as the primary supplier, and then we work with a subcontracted supplier base across those 20 categories and 340 subcategories to deliver those projects and outcomes. Now, the reason that NEPRO 3 is completely different to any other framework that's out there is because it removes all of those traditional barriers within the public sector. It does everything from requirement gathering, specification gathering with the customer, the managed service of the procurement bit in the middle, the onboarding of suppliers, the accreditation of suppliers, the contracting and putting the contract in place, and then the management of that contract ongoing with the delivery of the outcomes between Bloom, the supplier, you, and then the contracting authority or the buyer. So that end-to-end process wrapped up with a compliant vehicle to buy services is very unique in the market. It's not comparable to a CCS framework or an ESPO framework or a YPO framework in that sense, that they provide a fantastic route for buyer A and supplier B to get compliantly matched to go through that procurement route. But what that doesn't have is the wraparound service. What that doesn't have is the managed service that sits around that does every single point throughout it. And that's where we stand apart from everyone else in the market, and where we add value to both the supplier and to the buyer. So as an accredited supplier with Bloom, you don't have to go through that time-consuming pre-qualification stage. So if everyone who's done public sector procurement here and everyone who's gone through tenders to win business, you go through that lengthy process at the start of doing an SQ or what was a PQQ, and that supplier questionnaire at the start, and that pre-qualification where you have to put in all your insurance details and all the things you've delivered in the past, and your turnovers and your people, and you've got to do all the parts at the front to qualify. So there's a lot of upfront time and cost every time you do a tender, which is part of that qualification. Then, if you're fortunate to get past the qualification stage, you then go into the lengthy process of having to deliver the response to the invitation to tender, or go through the negotiated procedure, or whichever of the 7 procedures they've put in place. Now, with Bloom and NEPRO 3, you don't need to do that. You do it once. You do the pre-qualification, you do that accreditation process once, and we have a detailed accreditation process. And once you're accredited within the Bloom marketplace, you're then accredited for any of our buyers to access your services and go through the process of the procurement process, which we'll talk about. So what that means is it's do it once, and you don't have to do it again until we go through that re-accreditation process as part of the cycle of re-accreditation in the future. So what that does, that saves a lot of upfront time and cost. And then, as we say here, unlike traditional procurement routes, the time-consuming and costly, which are timely and costly for suppliers, because as a supplier, if you're going through an OJU process or a full invitation to tender, which could take maybe 3 months for a complex procurement, or maybe 6 even for an even more complex procurement, that's all upfront cost you're putting in without any guarantee to winning that work. That's business development work, that's tender writing. That could be you if you're a sole trader sitting of an evening on weekend typing tender responses with no guarantee that you're going to win that work. You could be one of 10, one of 20, one of 30. With NEPRO 3 and Bloom, contracts can be awarded in as little as 13 days and does not require that experience and the time to complete those lengthy tenders. So those direct awards can be made in as little as 13 days, and then the mini competitions, which are a much watered down version of a full competitive process, still doing the checks and balances, still asking the right questions, but in a much slimmed down version that asks the most pertinent questions for that project being delivered. That can be then done in 23 days. So as you can see, taking that 3 to 6 month process and really pulling it down to 13 or 23 days, depending on whether it's a direct award or mini competition. And then the final point in this one, Bloom and NEPRO 3 are a turnkey solution to grow your business with the public sector. Now, what does that mean? We'll come on to talk about that in a bit more detail. What this is we, through Bloom and NEPRO 3, as an accredited supplier, you can use it in your business development conversations to ensure that your services are procured in a compliant manner, in a timely manner, just to you without a competitive process, if you have the right types of conversations with the stakeholders and the buyer, which we'll come on to talk about. So as I mentioned, business through NEPRO 3 framework can come from 2 sources, direct award or mini competition. So not the most presentable slide in the world, this, so I apologise, but one you can digest when we send the pack out. But essentially what we're doing here is explaining the difference, and apologies if it's if we're mansplaining a smidge here, so I apologise for that, around the mini competition and the direct awards. So how does that work with Bloom? So the mini competitions work by, and that's a preference. I'll start by saying the procurement route is the preference of the buyer. They will indicate whether it's a mini competition or it's a direct award. If they indicate a mini competition, they'll send their requirement through. Our procurement team, the likes of Tony and Tony's colleagues, will work with them to pull together that requirement and the specification. And then what we will do is we will look at the Bloom marketplace and we will shortlist suppliers based on the capabilities and what has been demonstrated in our system for the suppliers who can deliver that requirement and deliver that specification. Or we may also get a request from the buyer to say, these are the 5 suppliers I would like to use because they've used them in the past, they've heard about them from elsewhere, any reason. Or they may say, here's 2 suppliers that I'd like to include in the mix. Go and find 3 or 4 other suppliers from your marketplace, and that's the shortlist we want. So it's a very flexible approach to creating a shortlist. Now we'll come on to talk about this because this is key for you as a supplier with the information you've put in our system. So in the Provide To system, we use that for scouring capabilities and scouring our suppliers for who can deliver those projects. Every time we do these webinars, depending on who the category manager is, I have to think on the hoof of a project example. So it's Tony today, so I'll probably ham-fistedly think of a construction example. If we get a requirement through for an architect, so far so good, Tony. If we get an architect requirement through, Tony will put in the requirements and all the parts of that. So the architect will be the headline, and then all of the nuances of what's required from that architect and the services for that. Tony will put that into our search engine within our Provide To system, and that will scour all of our suppliers and all of the information that's been put in there by the suppliers in the capability section. And that will pull out all of those suppliers who have put in there as architect and the 3 or 4 subcategories of architecture that are in there for what we're looking for. Tony will then go through that with the buyer and we'll create the shortlist. Now, the best way of being shortlisted for these mini competitions is by having a rich capability section and having as much information in there. And we're going to talk about that in a few slides' time around what good looks like. But as you can see on the bottom box here, what can I do to increase my business opportunities through Bloom? Number 1, ensure your supplier profile in Provide To is up to date and you are fully accredited. So fully accredited, and you've had that full accreditation process. So if you've gone through that and you have not been given the notification you're fully accredited, popping a note through to our supplier inbox, which the email is at the end. And then making sure that your profile is fully up to date. In the capability section, you've selected the right categories, the right subcategories, and you've made a rich profile that really showcases your capabilities. There's case studies, there's information uploaded. You've built a profile that means that you are in the best position to be shortlisted for the capabilities of your organization. Second to that, sorry, apologies, back on Minicom. Once we've done the shortlisting, we could potentially then do an expression of interest. So we could send out an expression of interest to a large list of suppliers or a slightly smaller list once it's gone through a shortlisting phase. And that's your opportunity to look at the requirement and go, actually, not for me. Or this is not something I've got capacity for at the moment. This is not on my plan at the moment, etc., etc. And then you wouldn't express an interest. If it's something you are interested in, and if it's something that you wish to do, that's where you then express an interest in the opportunity to then go through to the final shortlisting. So an expression of interest doesn't always happen, but on the larger projects where we're looking at more complex projects, it's likely there's an expression of interest in there to make sure that we've got the right levels and numbers of suppliers expressing the interest before we go through the mini competition. Now, what the mini competition is a short tender. So this is not a 400-page invitation to tender with a load of questions you have to fill out. This is likely 9 times out of 10 to be split between a technical question and technical questions around the specification, around what needs to be delivered, which would be around how you will deliver it, who your team are, the capabilities of those, and all the things you'd expect to be in the technical section. and that will be in the quality and technical evaluation. And then there will be a price evaluation. And that will be, what will be your cost to deliver this project, broken down by the milestones that need to be in there. And then they will be evaluated by Bloom and the buyer. And then ultimately the buyer will make their decision as to who they want to award that contract to, based on the technical capabilities that have been put forward and the price. And it will be split between, as you'd imagine in a tender sense, the weighting of each as what the buyer would like to do. So that's the mini competition process. Direct awards, much simpler. Direct awards can come from two sources. One is the buyer saying, I would like, I'm going to stick with my architect example, I would like an architect for the delivery of our new council building, and I have worked with Supplier X in the past, and I want to make my award to them. Supplier X is either accredited with Bloom or not accredited. If they are accredited, we crack on with the process, and it's a 13-day from the requirement coming through to the contract being awarded. If the supplier is not accredited, there'll be a rapid accreditation process with the supplier who's brought to us by that buyer. And then again, that will all be encompassed within that 13-day direct award period as well. So that's one, that's the direct award coming directly from the buyer. The second option for direct awards, which we see a lot more of, is you as a supplier having Bloom and NEPRO as part of your business development conversations. So that's you going into stakeholders, that's you as an architect going into there to talk to the head of architecture within the council. I'm sure there's a better title than that, to talk about their pipeline of opportunities, to talk about what they're going to be delivering in the future, and as part of that business development work, putting yourself forward. Now they say, we want you, we want your services, and you as an organisation say, oh, I've got a route by which I can be procured in a compliant manner with a direct award. Done. We then pick that up and we'll talk about how that works and work with you. And what that does then, that gives you that turnkey solution to sell your products into the public sector in a compliant manner. So how can you increase your business opportunities by that direct award? Firstly, ensure that all your business development teams, all of your customer teams, anyone who's talking to your customers, everyone understands that direct awards can be made through NEPRO 3 and Bloom, and that actually that's the only framework like this in the UK, and Bloom is the only managed service provider with that framework who can deliver that as your best route to a direct award. Because it takes around 13 days, that means that your boots on the ground for that project delivery will be faster than any other route. So your time to revenue recognition, your time to starting to invoice and bill, and your time to deliver those outcomes is far less than any other route that's out there. Sharing this webinar, sharing this business development toolkit with your business development teams, anyone else in the business, they can understand the compliant route, how it works, and all the bits that sit alongside of it. And then sharing on accreditation through social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. So we've got some resources which will be on the latter pages of this deck, which you can share and use to say, I am an accredited NEPRO 3, I'm an accredited NEPRO 3 in Bloom, and you can access my services by X. And what we see is a lot of business comes through that route by suppliers using this as their compliant route within the public sector. So some examples around that mini competition and the capability sections. If you think back to what I said about the mini comps, Tony will go in there and he will put in what he's looking for in the system, and it will scour it based upon the richness of the capability section. So we've got some good and some bad here to show you and demonstrate what good looks like. As bad, so I shouldn't use the word bad, less good versions of what's in there. So here we go, here's a capability section. Now, what we see an awful lot of is people who will cut and paste from a website or a corporate brochure the blurb at the front about their business in the capability section. We're an architecture firm with 50 years heritage, and it's really good and it's very interesting, but it tells us nothing about the capabilities of that organization. It gives us nothing that would be picked up on a keyword search when we're doing our shortlisting. So in this one here, this is a supplier that's registered and accredited against 37 classifications within Bloom. So that's quite a lot. And that's including transformation, change management, digital ICT. So this is a digital ICT provider across 37 classifications. So on the right-hand side here, you'll see what they've put in their capability section. what they've done here is they've gone into a lot of detail around what they do using the keywords of what they do as an organization: program management, change management, the information systems, data architecture, all of those things that you would expect that business across those 37 categories to have capabilities within. So this is one example. This is a more prosy, longer, 340 words, so still very succinct, but in a written format. Absolutely fine, covers what they do, will be picked up when we scour to look for any of those key capabilities. Another good example here, which is a lot easier, because we do keyword searches, this is another supplier that's registered against 22 ICT categories, classifications, apologies, in the marketplace. What they've done is they have just listed all of the keywords separated by a comma for the capabilities that they can deliver. Perfect. All of the previous example, which is very good, the haves and the ands and the whats and the hows, they make it read nice, but actually they're not what we're looking for when we do a keyword search. What we're looking for is Cyber Essentials Plus, SharePoint, Teams, Agnostic Advice. So you've got two options. For your capability section, I would advise you all to go look at your capability section, provide to, ensure you've selected all of the categories and subcategories and those classifications, and then make sure that your capability section is rich, either through a well-written, succinct capability, or even just through single words separated by a comma. And that will mean that we will be able to search for your capabilities in a much better fashion. Now let's look at one that's less good. This is a procurement consultancy firm that is accredited against 35 classifications: supply chain logistics, sustainability risk management. There's a big amount of work that they do. Their capability section says procurement consultancy and support services. This organization, unless it's known to us, and unless it's known to our category team and our procurement team, unless it's known to the buyer, probably will never get shortlisted, because we will not pick them up in a keyword search if we're looking for procurement transformation in supply chain, or procurement transformation with regards to sustainability and risk management, because it's not in their capability section. So please do, I implore you, go and look at your capability sections and update them and make them as rich as possible. And also within there, make sure your categories are correct, your subcategories are correct, and you've got your case studies and you've got as much information uploaded to the portal as possible to really showcase. That is your shop window. Think of it as your shop window, fill it with your wares to make you the most appealing supplier in there for what we will need to deliver. So just again, go back to that and reiterating that direct award perspective. You're in that business development conversation, you're talking about your fantastic architectural services, and actually the project's going to cost £200,000, and the ball drops and they say, we're going to have to go out to tender. It's over threshold. It's over the value of public contracting regs. We're going to have to go out to tender. So actually, you've gone from being the supplier they want to potentially being any willing provider or any provider across the UK who could respond to that if it goes out through an open tender. Your competitive edge has gone from here to potentially here as soon as that tender goes out. But actually, you can say, yes, it's over threshold. Yes, public contracting regs and ODU says that it needs to go out through an open tender or needs to go out through a negotiated process or one of the procedures. But actually, I'm accredited with NEPRO 3 and Bloom, and through that, you can actually do a compliant direct award to me in 13 days. What a powerful tool that is as part of that, because that person you're talking to who wants your services, but it needs to follow procurement rules, rightly so, can still do and follow procurement rules in a compliant manner, but still appoint you directly in as little as 13 days. So again, that direct award is a fantastic business development opportunity for you, and one we can talk about more. And if you want more discussion around that, dropping a note to our supplier inbox to discuss that in more detail, should you have some opportunities to talk about. So directing your customers to join the NEPRO 3 framework. So if they're not already a customer of Bloom, and our supplier list is available, and there's a link at the end that takes you to our buyer list, apologies. There's a link at the end that takes you to our buyer list. If they're not already a registered Bloom buyer, it's a very simple process. Very simple process. You can just make us aware, going through to our supplier inbox, that you've got an opportunity with one of your customers who you'd like to use Bloom and Nipro to get your business in there. One of our customer team will pick that up directly with the buyer, get them registered, get them to sort out the paperwork. And there's two bits of paperwork. One is a Nipro associate membership form, which takes probably about 5 minutes to fill in, simple form to send in. And then it's the Nipro 3 call off, and that's the framework call off between Bloom and the buyer, which gives them access to the framework. That is a fixed document. It's a fixed framework document. It's not amendable. It is what it is. And if there's any challenges or any discussions, that's where we have Lee Dixon, our legal counsel, who's on the call today, or one of our procurement team who can liaise with the buyer side should there be any challenges around getting that signed off. But it is certainly a document that we just see normally signed off and not amended by the buyer. Once those steps have been done, that's it. We can crack on, and that business can be put through the Bloom framework, the Nipro 3 framework, and through Bloom for you to start delivering your project with that customer. Again, not the most presentable friendly slide because there's a lot of detail in here, but what this shows here is just a process. We get a lot of questions around what is the process. So what this shows here is who's responsible for what during that process, from the specification coming in to getting the contract awarded and then that payment. So this just shows all of those steps around what the buyer does, what Bloom does, and what you as a supplier do. So in yellow, they're the bits that you as a supplier would be involved in. So that's either through bringing business development activity coming through the Nipro 3 for a direct award. We've got a similar one this for mini competitions. And then around the process of responding and putting the contract in place, and then the onward payment process to ensure that that payment's been delivered. That's a key part of the Bloom proposition of what we do. Our involvement doesn't end once the contract's been put in place. We stick with you and the project and the buyer for the lifetime of it. Because we put a statement of works in place for every single project, which is different to every other route that goes through, so it's not a time and materials way of working, it's a statement of works. It has detailed milestones of delivery, which means that you have to submit your plan to say it's been that milestone has been delivered, and that's then managed by Bloom to get the buyer to sign that off and then trigger the payment process to manage that. Now, what that does is it means that rather than having a time materials where you paid on a day rate, actually you cost it based on the delivery of that program or project for the period of time it is with the milestones. So if it's a 12-month project, you may have monthly milestones. Actually, if you overachieve those milestones and you overachieve that project, you're still getting paid the same for that total project value. That efficiency is yours to be had. The buyer's happy because they've had a much more efficient service delivered, and you're happy because you've got the same amount of money that you had planned because that's what was in the project, and you can move on to other projects, you can do more with that buyer. So actually, what the outcomes-based model does is it drives quality, it drives efficiency, and it means you as a buyer, you as a supplier, are in control of delivery. And that gives that assurance to the buyer around the outcomes being delivered for that project. Again, this just shows the mini competition and just adds in those extra stages that warrant that 10-day difference, because you as a supplier there have to respond to the tender and that what I mentioned there on that technical questionnaire and that price, which we give you normally 10 working days to do. I say normally because there may be times where that may be shortened, unlikely, because we do always want to make sure you as a supplier has quality time to respond. But more than likely, it will be extended for more complex projects or more complex opportunities that come out from there. Compliance is key. So actually, you've had that conversation with your stakeholder, and that's gone great. And that stakeholder said, Bloom Nipro sounds fantastic. I can appoint you as a supplier and in a compliant manner. And then it goes through to the procurement team. And that's where it's really important to make sure that they understand that the compliance is key and that Nipro 3 was procured in a compliant manner in line with public contracting regs and OJU. So as you see on the right-hand side here, this actually has all of the details around the OJU reference and the contract notice and the contract award for the whole Nipro 3 framework. So this can be used and handed and given to those procurement colleagues or any colleagues within the organisation before potentially we have a discussion with them, just to make them understand how compliant this solution is for buying your services. And again, I won't go into this in too much detail, but this just shows and demonstrates the compliance overview that can be used with those customers you're talking to about how this works. So on the left-hand side there, we have the public sector buyer. That's your customer or your potential future customer. They've got the NEPRO 3 call-off, which I've already mentioned, and the NEPRO associate membership form, which can be a really rapid process. You know, could be within 24 hours, have all that paperwork completed. And then we have supplier agreement in place between Bloom and you as a supplier, which essentially is just our terms and conditions and our contract between you as a supplier and us as Bloom, how we will operate together overall. And then there's a statement of works, as I mentioned, in place for every single project. And that statement of works is the legally binding contract for that particular project. So that shows the flow of the main contracts. The NEPRO 3 call-off agreement between the contracting authority, the buyer, your customer, and Bloom. So that's our first contract. The supplier agreement between us, Bloom, and you as a supplier. So our terms of engagement, how we're going to work together, and what are our obligations, yours and ours. And then that statement of works being the actual delivery of the project in question. So we have one supplier agreement that will have that overarches your relationship in the marketplace, and then a statement of works for each of the different projects we deliver, which is that legally binding contract of delivery of what we are going to deliver together on behalf of the customer. So just touching on promoting yourself, I mentioned it in the section around what you can do around the mini comps and around that direct award to improve your opportunities, including NEPRO 3 and Bloom in your company email signatures. So lots of organizations include all the frameworks there on their email signatures or their compliant routes to purchase their services. You can buy my services by this route on their emails. You can add the Bloom Accreditation supplier logo to your website and link it back to the Bloom website that then takes it through so the buyers can see everything about Bloom. We've got Twitter and LinkedIn content, which is on a link at the end of this deck. Create case studies in your projects. Now, case studies are one of the most powerful tools. I'm sure you're all aware of this and you've all got them, but case studies are the most powerful tool you've got with regards to this. It is how you demonstrate what you have delivered in the public sector or even in the private sector if it's transferable, but what you have delivered, how you've done it, but more importantly, what were the outcomes of what you did. Now, what that does is that demonstrates your capabilities, that demonstrates what you will deliver, and it will maybe put you ahead of the competition. It will maybe make you stand out because you can demonstrate the demonstrables of your service and your business. So case studies absolutely are key and vital. And then finally, creation of thought leadership content. So Alex has joined us from our marketing team as one of our senior marketing execs. Alex is always on the lookout for really good thought leadership content from our suppliers. If you look at our Bloom LinkedIn, we've got a great following on there, and we are now doing an awful lot more with regards to thought leadership content. So we're currently in the throes of the latter stages of a digital transformation campaign. We've been working with a vast array of suppliers, from the big suppliers like EY through to micro suppliers who've got a very niche offering, to create thought leadership that's then pushed out through our customer base. It's sent out to our buyers if we've got the relevant contacts in there. So, for example, CTOs and CIOs, they're our target audience when it came to the digital transformation. Pushing that content out, using our media channels that we've got to really showcase the quality of the suppliers that we've got within the marketplace. Because again, back to our virtuous cycle of this, the better our supplier base is, the better our supplier base promote themselves, the more opportunities come from our buyers, the more buyers come to Bloom, and then the cycle just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what I would say is, take a look on our LinkedIn page, take a look on our website, and look at the types of thought leadership that we are creating with our supplier base. And if you've got things, and if you've got interesting news articles, if you've got interesting propositions in what you deliver, reach out to our marketing team on the email address that's on the latter pages of this document, and then we can really start to talk about what we can do together on that information. And then finally, before we move through to any questions that we've got, so if you do have any questions, please do start entering them if you haven't already in the Q&A box. Useful resources and contacts. So we've got a supply resource page at bloom.services/supplier-resources. And what that's got on there is the promoting your accreditation, working with Bloom, the provide to our system resources, and then resources around NEPRO 3. So that supplier, that category catalog and all the bits that sit around NEPRO 3. We've got some videos there which are specific around submitting SDPs, because we found that actually we took a lot of feedback from our customers that our system, they need a lot of our suppliers, some of our suppliers need more help with regards to submitting their plans, which is when their milestones are being delivered. So there's some videos there which are tutorials to take you through. There's an FAQ section, so anything that I've completely missed as I've gone through today, which is likely, there is a great FAQ section there that can take more questions. Now, if we haven't covered it today and it's not in the FAQs or it's not in the documents above, dedicated inbox for our suppliers. So that's managed by our supplier team. So we've got suppliers at bloom.services. Ask a question. There's no stupid questions. Ask as many as you need, and we will get back to you promptly and respond with that. Now, equally, that can be used for questions. It can also be used for if you've got opportunities, if you've got customers you want us to come and work with you on, if there are opportunities you're working on, but actually you feel that you would need some assistance to maybe get it over the line because they need help thinking how a direct award could work, drop us a line. One of our customer team will be able to facilitate that discussion with you to ensure that the procurement teams, your stakeholder, understand how it can be delivered and what that system and service is. So finally, just looping all that round. So what we've gone through there is all the ways in which Bloom works, the categories we deliver, the subcategories, the types of buyers, the breadth and scale of buyers that we can access, how you can access those buyers in a better manner by the mini competitions or direct awards, making sure that your provide to profile is rich in data and information around you as a supplier and what you can deliver, ensuring your business development teams understand how direct awards could work, talking about promoting your accreditation and using your accreditation as part of that development, and then all the resources that sit there and that can be used for you. Now we've done several of these webinars, and they've all been really successful with lots of great feedback. And we do want feedback, obviously, because we are, again, like I say, looking at how we work differently with our supplier network. And I'm really pleased to see that the Q&A is starting to heat up. So we'll have some good discussions in a moment with those. And we are going to be continuing to do these webinars on a monthly basis. Now, we've done 3 now, which have just been around this growth aspect. What we're going to move into next in these webinars as they evolve is starting to look at specific sectors and specific categories, and starting to look at the types of opportunities we're seeing, pipelines, and starting to really discuss and look forward and also look back on saying, well, actually, in the last 3-4 weeks, we've seen a huge amount of social care projects. We've seen a huge amount of regeneration projects for town centres because of COVID. And then we can start to talk about what we're seeing as trends, both at a macro level and a micro level, but then also what we're seeing in a pipeline. And what I hope we can do then is we can start to talk in a more open manner as a group around how we can then develop our opportunities together. So please do keep an eye out for any notes that get sent out from our marketing team around future webinars. If you do have any questions or any feedback, please pop it through to that supplier inbox. And I will now pick up some Q&As and start to go through those with our team that's on here. So, right, if you just bear with me one moment. First question, which is nice and easy, will the slides be shared after? Yes, they will. So the webinar link will come out as will the slides, so you can rewatch and or share across your organisation. The next question I've got here now, how do the case studies work with the capabilities section, and what exactly does the supplier see and how do they see it? I might hand that over to Alex. Alex, if it's around case studies, you may need to pick that up with one of our colleagues from the procurement operations team around how they sit in the system.
So I can take the case studies element from how we sort of showcase them. So what we do with supplier case studies is we host them on our website in a specific case studies section. And our sort of account management and sales functions then have this bank of case studies and showcases of work suppliers have done with Bloom that they use when relevant, depending on the conversation that they're having. The other thing that we use with our case studies is we also try and get them out in email and social media comms and give them the sort of relevant airing, because what we're trying to do often is promote the solutions that are actually and the innovative solutions that are going on in the supply chain. So if you do have case studies that you'd like to work on of work that has been conducted with Bloom, or even without the involvement of Bloom, but as a showcase opportunity, the email address to contact for that would be marketing@bloom.services. and we could discuss working on a case study and how we could promote that work.
Thank you, Alex. Nathan, would you want to pick up the second part of that question around, where do they sit in the system in the capability section? And then I'm guessing it says, does the supplier see and how do they see it? I'm guessing that might be actually, how does the buyer see those?
Hi, how you doing? Yeah, great question. So the case studies sit within the extended profile, and that kind of clicks in with the capability section when the operations guys are reviewing your profile. So Adam, what's the other question on what does the buyer see?
Yeah, so if one of our suppliers have uploaded a case study within there or have uploaded some information, how is that potentially shared with our buyers as we go through that process?
Sure, another great question. So a lot of this is driven by what the buyer wants to see, and they stipulate that at the beginning of the process with the operations guys or the PMs. And if they do want to see your case studies, say we can request that, and we can also offer to share that detail with the buyers. So it'd be a combination of background information of the suppliers and what they submitted in the tender as well, and that the case studies can also be shared as and when requested. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Nathan. Got a question here from an anonymous attendee. We haven't had an appropriate tender for a while. Is it just us, or is it still very quiet? Thanks for asking that question. We've gone, as everyone will be aware, there was a significant slump in opportunities during the COVID period, where either from public sector just not spending as much because there was obviously risk around money being apportioned elsewhere and put onto different parts of service, but also because procurement teams were taking off everything other than PPE, temporary mortuaries, and buying everything that was related to COVID. So actually, procurement teams went into a very, very siloed way of working, focused just on the COVID response, rightly so. What we're starting to see now is actually, probably from the last week in August, first week in September, things are warming up significantly. So, and this is not just with Bloom, there's a market data trend as well. So if you look at some of the tussle data around contract award notices and contract notices going out across the whole of the public sector, it's definitely done a V shape. So much like the economy is doing it, it nosedived from March, April, May, and then from June, July, there was small shoots, green shoots of improvement. As we go through August, September, that's now starting to climb back up. So we're nowhere near back up to where we were with regards to contracts and opportunities coming through both overall with the public sector, but also through Bloom. But it is showing a very strong trajectory of growth back up there as well. Next question. I missed the start of the call. When is NEPRO 3 implemented? Lee?
Yep, hi everyone. NEPRO 3 actually came online on the 1st of September 2019. It's got an initial 4-year term with 2 possible extensions of additional 2 years thereafter, so up to 8 years.
Thank you, Lee. Question here, what percentage of projects awarded go through the direct award route where the supplier brings you a lead? And what percentage comes from a mini competition route open to more than one supplier? So thanks for that question. I'll take that one. It's actually 50-50, which feels like I've just said that answer, but actually it is the answer we've got. It is roughly 50-50. We do see some inter-month changes, and we do see things fluctuate around there, but largely it's a fair split across that from a mini competition and direct award. And actually, we make sure that we monitor that with our customers, and we make sure that our customer team are having conversations with our customers if they are heavily weighted towards direct awards and not mini competitions, because actually we want to be promoting mini competitions both from adding value to the customer, because we know that there's more value extracted from a mini competition because people are probably more competitive. Also, we want to open up more opportunities to our supplier base, particularly in regional areas and local areas for local economic growth. And the only way we can do that is through a mini competition. Because if it's all gone through a direct award, whilst that'll still be benefiting and still potentially be benefiting local supply chains, truly to get the value from that is around using more mini competitions. So it's a metric that we measure with our customers quite closely, and then we have conversations around that data to say, well, actually, you know what, guys, you've been using about 70% of direct awards. If you opened up more mini competitions, these are the types of suppliers you could be looking at, but equally, this is the value you'd extract and the quality potential increase you'd get by using mini competitions. Question here, do you have to submit a case study in order to be accredited for a particular category? I think this was the case when I first registered. Tony, I've not actually pointed a question at you, so I'm going to put you on the spot with this one. So do you have to submit a case study in order to be accredited for a particular category?
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Alan, for the question as well. Yeah, when you first register, yes, there is an opportunity to submit a case study on each individual ITT. The client will submit the CRF, which is a requirement. Within that, Bloom do ask for an example, a case study of works that are relevant to the individual project that they're asking for.
Thanks, Tony. Question here, are there any fees involved in the Bloom service? Yes, there are, and that was set as part of the NEPO 3 framework when we went through that process of the procurement of that with NEPO, the North East Procurement Organisation. And there's a 5% fee included within there for the overall service. And that 5% fee, that is over to you as a supplier as to how you operate with that 5% fee. Now, you can include that in your commercial modelling, and that can be included in your commercial modelling as part of what gets put forward to the authority, or you can look at how you want to incorporate that within your costs, and there's a flexibility element to how that works. But that 5% fee ensures that there is a compliant route, that the end-to-end service is delivered from specification all the way through to that ongoing contract management, but also by giving that opportunity to open up your capabilities, potentially at a national level, and export that talent, export what you can deliver to other regional areas. And what we find is very successful is that exporting of talent. So actually where you work in a regional area, because you're regionally constrained potentially, this opens up opportunities at a national level as well. So we can then facilitate that. Within that 5% fee as well is it's handling of all payments and handling of all prompt payments, ensuring that payments are made and ensuring that's there, but also doing all of that time element at the upfront area. So actually, if you start to look at it and then compare the 5% fee that sits on that project against the potential upfront cost of acquisition of a contract if you were going through another route, the time taken to develop a tender, the business development, the uncertainty of whether you're even going to win it. Actually, once you weigh up all of that across there, it's a very economically advantageous model in comparison around that. Next question, is there a facility for an accredited provider to search the opportunities available rather than wait to be shortlisted? Tony.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Alan, again. Yeah, there's not a opportunity as such to be search for opportunities. Like I think Adam kind of covered it within the presentation. It's slightly different to your practice and other platforms that the client has control of where their project actually goes to and who sees that. So we may take that as a expression of interest and open that right out to dozens and dozens of suppliers who are competent and who can show relevance in the work. But ultimately, those that land on the Provide To system are focused really on the suppliers that the client requests.
Perfect. Thank you, Tony. We have got a few more questions that sit in there, but unfortunately, in the interest of time, what we're going to have to do is take those offline and just answer them as part of our Q&A document. So if you have submitted a question and we haven't got round to it, apologies for not being able to answer live, but we will be sending out a PDF of all the questions asked today with full and thorough responses. So it'll be more in-depth than what we've gone through, if possible, if we've got more information. And equally, if you're one of the several questions that are still sitting that came at the last few moments, we'll answer those in the document. So thank you very much for your time today. Hopefully you found that useful, and thank you to the rest of the panelists who joined me from Bloom for answering those questions. If you get any more questions or if you would like any more information, pop yourself over to the links at the end of this presentation. Equally, if you're not getting what you need from that, drop us an email through to our supplier inbox and we'll be sure to pick that up with you. And that just leaves me to say thanks again for joining us. Thank you, everyone.